Have you ever wanted to make your sim feel as close to a real airplane as possible? Well, with the Moza AY210 force feedback yoke, you're getting that much closer. This will be an unbiased review and setup video on this yoke. I purchased this yoke with my own money. Let's get into it. Alright guys, hello and welcome everybody back to the video. I'm your Sim CFI, which makes me your simulator flight instructor. If you have any questions, you can leave them down below or on my Discord, and I'll be sure to answer it as best I can. If you guys are new here, I am a robotic pilot. I fly the CRJ 900 series. I used to be a flight instructor before that. And so if you do have any questions on robot flying or simulation flying, you can ask down below. And if I don't know the answer, I can ask one of my buddies like Flight Sim Gaming or CSD Gaming or Owls, and they'll give you the rundown on how it works. So today we'll be taking a look at the Moza AY210 force feedback base paired with their Moza yoke as well. And I'll be showing this to you in the Cessna Citation by FlightFX. When this yoke is paired with a good airplane, this sim comes alive, and I cannot say that more. This yoke can't make a bad airplane a good airplane, but it can make a great airplane amazing to fly. And that's what this citation is as well. To fly, it hand flies beautifully with this yoke. At the top right corner, you'll be greeted with our channel partners. All their links are down below. I have discount codes for Tobii Eye Tracker, Pimax, which is our brand new partner. Pimax, there's our VR headsets. If you want to save 3%, use code CFI to save 3%. Code CFI, which equates to about $50 or so at checkout. So Charlie Fox India is the code, and you can use my affiliate link down below, which just helps the channel if you could do that as well. So thank you to all of them, and all their discount codes will be all down in the description for you, including my Discord as well. Feel free to join that and be a part of our Discord. Well, without further ado, guys, let's get into this video. Alright guys, so as you can see, this is the Moza yoke. We have the grip itself, which is a very nice high quality plastic, and then the base, which is pretty substantially sized. From just the base to here, it's about a subway foot long right there, so about I'd say 16 inches, something like that, 15 to 18, somewhere in that kind of range. And the actual pole, if you extend this all the way out, would make that further, probably about 25 inches or so if I had to roughly guess on that. So it's quite a big piece of kit to put on your desk. It's very heavy, so when you pick it up, make sure not to kill your back when you do that. You can see that it has the connector pin there, and the yoke has the Moza signature quick release yoke mechanism, so you're able to just hot swap this with any yoke you like. Currently, this is the only yoke grip that they sell. However, I am probably sure soon, if this product does well, they'll be releasing more of them. Before we get into the buttons and all that, I'll show you that I bought the desk mounts that come with this as well, which is an added price. I mounted to my desk, so I needed that. However, there are screws on the base right here, one on each, or two of the screw holes, and then there's one in the back there that's a empty slot. I can try to show you without breaking something here. This is where a Lazy Susan comes in handy. That's the back one there. So you have one on each side. The front has two screws, and the back has that empty, the open slot. So you can mount it to a sim setup, rig, whatever you like. You can make your own, drill your holes in the desk or whatever you want to do. Or if you're like me, where I have kind of a hot swappable desk, I play, I do other video games. I like to edit on my own PC, obviously. I like to fly the Airbus. So when I fly different airplanes and do different things, I want to be able to just move it. So that's why I bought the desk clamps. They actually work quite well. And how they work, if I back this up a little bit, let me bring the base forward to about here. I'll put the grip on by just using the hot swappable, throw it in there. I give it a nice little push, and we're in. Let me move this all the way out of your way there. And then simply take your desk mount and these little rubber pads that it comes with here. You put one on the side, put one on the side to make more of a bigger surface. At least that's how I've been using them. And then take your desk mount, simply put it on, and obviously you would turn it to go really tight. And it actually works quite well. To be honest, the yoke is so heavy that if you set it to a lighter setting, you can probably get away with not using a mount. At least for my testing. However, obviously, if you do use the mount, it is a lot better. Keep in mind, this will move your desk as you're playing with the yoke. If you're being kind of rough with really high settings, stiff settings on the yoke, your desk will move a little bit. It may not move too much. It might just shake if you have a lot of hardware on it. It's kind of weighed down already. Plus this on the desk will weigh it down, but it will shake for sure. So we'll get into the actual yoke, and to take it off, you just press the buttons and take it off. We'll move this back a little bit. Okay, and then this is the actual yoke grip. It's not actually styled after... Okay, now this is the yoke grip. Now it's not actually styled after any particular style of yoke. It's more kind of a general yoke, kind of beechcrafty a little bit in a way. Moza is brand new to the flight simulator community and market, so there's going to be some choices and some design decisions that probably don't make sense. And I've seen a lot of other people talk about this, and honestly, the buttons do what I need them to do. So for me, they don't really matter too much. But you'll see we have two hats up here, which I don't think has ever existed on a yoke before, but they're there for you. There's two of these like 8-way D-pad switches, which again, you could be mapped to trim. And you can do rudder or aileron with that if you wanted to, although yokes typically don't have it. Buttons here, which I actually like, because I'm a right seat main user, as I like to be in the sim for my real world, to keep it real world for me, I can map autopilot disconnect, and I can have trim. Or if you want to use the left side, autopilot disconnect, and you have trim, which I actually really like, that I don't have to make some weird control bindings to fly right seat. So unlike my TCA yoke, which had an axis on this side and a button on this side, in Microsoft 2024, I was unable to map trim to my usual side, and I had to do some different button that felt kind of weird, that little like left and right switch up here. So it was just kind of strange. But in this one, I can do whatever I want with it. Looking at the back, we have two triggers, or kind of like an L1 button, I guess you'd say, and an L2. That was like a joystick controller. What I typically use this for, if you're flying right seat, I'd use the trigger for push to talk, and I would use this button here for the CRJ specifically is the flight director sync button. Now in real world, the RJ has one more button here, which we would use for stab trim cutout. So if I really wanted to make it realistic, I'd probably do stab trim cutout, sync button, and then I'd have to make somewhere over here push to talk. In real world, it's over there, but it's close enough, whatever. On the left side, I have my Discord push to talk. Actually, sorry, my my Tobii eye tracker disengage, my Discord push to talk, and then nothing really set on that side, to be honest. On the front, you have a checklist followed by some buttons you can map. So if you wanted to map this to your autopilot panel, heading button, nav button, altitude, approach. This is kind of the thing where I'm talking about that Moza's kind of new to the community. If you don't own any autopilot panel, I guess you can use these. I don't know why they'd be on the yoke, but you know, you can use them there. You get a home and some other extra buttons you can map these to. I don't use any of these, so they're there if you want them, but tons of buttons on the yoke if you want to map them. Coming closer here to the switches here, your standard switch. They've labeled them nav, beacon, strobe. Then below that we have battery, fuel pump, and pitot. So kind of Cessna-ish, I would say they made these, but you know, solid switches, good for that. I don't know what these are, but they say system and engine. So you can map those to whatever you want. These probably feel the cheapest to me. It's like a weird click, but that's it. And you have some random rotary knob down here. Again, for me personally, I'm not buying this for buttons. I'm buying this for the force feedback, the bass, and the build quality of the bass and the grip, and for the price point. I didn't really expect to use any of these, and I don't use any of them except for the gear lever. I do use, although it's a kind of a cheapy plastic, it does have a really cool feature that it does have a gear up and a gear mid position. I have to work on how to map that, but if you're flying the 7.3, you can put your gear in the off position there. So down, off, up, all works. And then below that, you got a little flap lever. It's shaped like a flap, so there you go. That's it for the base. There's no other buttons on that either. But again, I think that's enough buttons. I don't really know of a plane that needs that many buttons. If you're using other hardware like the Winwings, you know, FCU and things like that. So we're gonna go ahead and talk about quickly the build quality. Now, this retails for about $850 US before tax and shipping. The competitors for a force feedback yoke are going to be well over $1,200 for the most part before tax. So you're already getting an insane discounted price. Now, we haven't seen Winwing's force feedback yoke just yet, but right now this is an insane discounted force feedback yoke. This build quality is very nice. I'm squeezing hard here and you can't hear any cracking. That was my knuckle. You can't get so hard I'm squeezing. You can't hear any cracking or bending or anything. This is solid. I really like the grip of this. I tried this at the Flight Sim Expo and was blown away. I was there with Blue Games. I think Owl stopped by as well. I think I was there with XP as well. I was just at the Moza house the entire time. And I tried this there and I loved it. And again, guys, I paid for this with my own money. I did not get sent this, so I'm not paid to say this. I am affiliated with Moza as a partner. If you want to buy this yoke, you can use my link down below, which helps my channel. However, I bought this myself. I paid for this myself and I shipped it, not myself, but I paid for shipping myself. So it all came with my own money. Either way, very good build quality, very interesting to see that feature and where we can go with that. I hope to see a 737 yoke, an 87 yoke, a 777 yoke, a Cessna yoke, and all sorts of stuff. In terms of build quality on the base, it is metal, okay? And CSD Gaming has opened this up, guys, and said all the internal portions of this are metal as well, and very, very high quality. Where you're losing or where you're saving money, really, is on these switches for the most part. That's kind of the cheapest part about this. And for me personally, I don't care too much. I'm more concerned with the build quality, how long it's gonna last, which we don't know technically yet. However, if you treat it right, I think it'll last an okay time. And by treat it right, because I already know some people are gonna comment, yes, I broke my TCA yoke. However, before I basically manually broke it, about 5 months in of just using it nicely like this, the sensor inside, the wires got loose and I had to fix it. And it kept getting to a point where I would roll. This is the TCA Boeing yoke, not this one. But I would do a little bit of roll and it would actuate the pitch and all this kind of stuff. So the TCA yoke and other yokes I've tried, to me, don't compare to this in terms of quality already. So I've had this for a month and it's solid. And I'm flying it like an airplane. I fly the RJ, I'm flying like an RJ, nice and quick maneuvers like that. No problem. So it works just fine. All right, guys, let's get it hooked up on the sim and we will chat a bit more over there. 2 cables plugged in. This is for power from the power brick, and this is to the computer with USB-C. And the power brick, sorry for the mess, is right here. I recommend, and again, this is CSD Gaming that helped me with this as well, but I recommend having this unplugged. Plug the yoke in first, then plug in the power brick, and then turn it on at the yoke. If you don't do that, if you leave the power brick plugged in and plug in the yoke after the power is already plugged in, you will create a little tiny spark back there. All right, guys, so we're all on the PC now. You can see the yoke is plugged in, the power brick is on, we're all secured to the desk, it ain't gonna go anywhere. And now we have the Moza software on your screen there. Make it a little bit smaller there. So you can see nothing is connected. What we gotta do is press this little power button. It's, see if I can show you. It's at the very bottom right down here. You just click it, and it's gonna do a self-test. So it's gonna turn on, and the yoke's gonna go and do its self-test there. And for some reason it activates my background on my desktop. Don't know why. And it's gonna recenter, so don't touch it yet. Now it's done. You can see my whole desk shakes when it's doing like that, but I honestly have nowhere else to put it, so that's kind of where I am with this right now, unfortunately. Now that we're in the Moza software, you can see that you can have a ton of settings, and I'm not the master of this in any means, but I've been doing about 1 month of testing with the CRJ and the Citation and the 777 and all sorts of airplanes. And basically what I have done is I've created profiles for each individual airplane. Let me go ahead and make the camera a little smaller there. You can see the Moza software. So I went ahead and made a Moza profile for this yoke on every plane that I fly. So I have one for the Max, one for the 777, one for the RJ, one for the 27, and most of them don't differ too much, but there's little subtle differences. So I'll take you through what I usually do to make a profile, and basically it involves a lot of landing, because landing is when you're going to be using the yoke quite a bit. So we'll go through that in the future here, but for right now I want to show you the software just a little bit. Right now we're in the basic settings. So to get here, we go home, AY210. We're in the basic settings, and we have a choice of force feedback style or logic, I guess. And you can see if you click the little, or you just hover over the exclamation point, it gives you a bit of a breakdown. So it's a direct input allows the game to directly control the force feedback effects of the input device. Telemetry allows force feedback to use telemetry data from the game to generate force feedback, so the sim talking to the yoke. And the last one is integrated. Both direct input and telemetry effects are active in the sim simultaneously. So you would think you would want this one all the time, but there's some airplanes that the sim doesn't talk to the yoke too well in, so I've directed to just use direct input, and sometimes I usually I'm hopping between these two. I don't really touch telemetry alone too much. But anyways, below that we have conservative and aggressive. This is how hard the so this is a temperature control mode, and basically in conservative it's allowed to go maximum of 30 degrees Celsius, and then in aggressive it goes to 40 degrees Celsius, and it says in the aggressive mode avoid touching the base. I'll be honest with you guys, I mainly use this in aggressive mode. By the way, with conservative you will lose some performance out of the base, but in aggressive mode this hasn't gotten hot, so I don't know if I'm not, you know, maxing it out all the way. I will tell you, if you have every single slider maxed, you are pulling with everything to get this to move. It has tons of force. And then below we have maximum torque output that this system's going to put out, overall force feedback intensity, which they say adjust the force feedback intensity in the X or Y axis direction by scaling the force feedback effect. Users operate more easily while retaining the original details. So I've kind of played with every single setting, and the way I play with the setting is I'll go in an airplane that I know how it should fly. A 172, I instructed on that for a while. A CRJ, I fly that currently. I actually just came home flying it from yesterday, so I know how this airplane should feel. And basically what I do is I'll put the setting to the max, feel the yoke, and go, that's not right. Put it at 50%. That's kind of getting closer, and you can kind of dial in on where you want to go. And I do that with every setting. I leave everything turned all the way off, like this. And I'll start from one to the top, and I'll kind of set them as I like, and then I can kind of fix them as they go. Okay, that's how I personally do it. Because and you can read each description as well, which I implore you to do. But if you're just on the fly, no pun intended, you can do that. Expert settings. So depending on the airplane, what I've done is I like my roll to be just as tight or stiff, or just not maybe just as tight, but pretty close to the pitch force, because I've noticed a lot of profiles I've used, and even the honeycomb yoke suffers from this. The roll is all loosey-goosey, and then the pitch is super stiff. Right now there's nothing on it because I turned all the force off. So what I went ahead and did was in the expert settings under the torque and the overall game, and this depends on the profile you want, of course, I went ahead and set my the maximum torque right now is currently 68. However, the pitch is only 60% and the roll is 100%. And what this does is my roll is going to be affected by this number more, and I can have a nice stiff roll while also maintaining a stiff pitch. If I didn't do this, if I left these at maximum and then just use the slider at the top for overall control, which is just controlling this slider, by the way, here, what ends up happening, to get a good feeling roll, you would need to have almost like 80 to 90, and at that point you can barely move the thing. So what I went ahead and did is and this is just trial and error, these aren't precise numbers, but I've went ahead and did about 70 to 60% on the torque, and about 60% of that is pitch is affected, only 60% of that 70, and then 100% of that 70% will affect the roll. Same thing with the roll feed, or the overall force feedback down there. Touch that. I haven't really touched the spring. That should actually be maxed out. I don't know why it isn't there. Dampener, I just set this with the overall strength. I don't play with the X and Y axis there too much, but you can if you'd like to. Inertia as well, you just play with the thing there. And then friction. The friction will control how much friction, really. So that's it simulates a friction force. It kind of feels fake if you use too much. So I would kind of use a bit of friction and dampener together, and a little bit of inertia to try to create a feeling. I wouldn't just use one or the other. I would use all three: dampener, friction, and inertia, to kind of create a balance so it feels real. We have dynamic settings, which if you click on each one will give you further settings that you can kind of have fun with. I don't touch these honestly too much. Telemetry settings, this is under general. You can simulate G-force, stall buffet, weapons if you're firing them off with a yoke, elevator droop. This would be good for like a 172. All sorts of different stuff, and you can kind of change as you like. So let me load my profile. I'm going to load one of my favorite profiles, and one of the best flying airplanes in this sim that I've tried recently, especially paired with this yoke, is the Citation. The Citation X by Flight Effects is absolutely amazing. I just got to find where I put it here. There's my max profile, my 172, my 727, my RJ, my triple. There it is, Citation. We'll load this preset, press confirm. And you can see it's all been set to where I had it set. And now the yoke will feel very good. And what I've noticed, it's very difficult. It took a lot of tuning and it's still not there perfectly, but it's very difficult to get a nice force applied to this while maintaining the ability for it to recenter itself. See how it nicely recenters? So I had to do a lot of playing around, and I found this setting called adaptive centering compensation, which does help with that. With it off, You see it doesn't center. The some will, some don't. It's a little slower to react. See that? But if I turn this setting on, boom, centers, right? So I like it. I want to always feel it, that return to center, as it's not a spring in the real airplane that's necessarily springing it back to center, but it's just the nature of the feedback of those controls. Remember, we're flying through the air, so everything is trying to neutralize those things. Plus, it's on hydraulics and everything too. And it's always you're always fighting, not fighting, but you're always moving it out of the center position. And it's going to want to feel like it's going to want to return to that center position. If you let go, it'll return. And that's what I've tried to do with all my profiles. And so I think it's okay now. It needs maybe a little bit faster on the pitch. The roll is perfect. See how, boom, centered. The pitch, I want it to snap back a little bit more, a little quicker, but that's okay. But I have tuned all that. The next thing I've tuned in Axis is sometimes if you're flying an airplane and you roll like this, sometimes just this little bit will make the airplane start rolling too quickly, or just this little bit of pitch will make the airplane go up or too down too quickly. So I've attuned the X and Y axis. So a little bit of pull. This is, let me show you default. That would be default right there. And if I do a little bit of pull, it's going to hit all these dots, right? All linear. You can choose different patterns and all that. If you don't want to mess with it, this will probably be your best bet, but I like to mess with it. So let me go ahead and load my profile again. I'll load the iFly and I'll go back and load my citation. And so now as I pull up, it's going to do less and less of the actual elevator than it would have when it was up there. So this would do a lot more aggressive elevator. And then with my profile where it's kind of tuned down here, it does a lot less. The only thing is, once it reaches that top dot and beyond, you have a little bit more play in the yoke, just a little bit more, right? That's all you get, but it's going to be a lot of elevator flexion. So I don't really ever pull this much anyways, unless you're doing some sort of stall technique, or maneuver. But yeah, so I've tuned both the X and the Y axis there, and you'll be able to get all my profiles. I'll leave my Discord down below, and you can go ahead and join the Discord. It'll all be in there. So that's kind of the software, and I haven't touched this special section at all. To download profiles, you can go to this little button down here to the bottom left. I'll move this here, this button right here, and you can search by game, you can search by device. So I want the Yoke. And then you can search by vehicle if you want. They don't have everything in here, but they have a good majority. And then you can just search. What I've noticed is my profiles that I make don't show up for other people. So you're just going to see the Moza ones that they've created by default. So you'll have to go and download mine if you want to go use mine. And to do that, all you would do is you would press this button here. Let's clear the filters. You'd press this little button here, and then you can import your own downloaded preset from right there. And that's it. That's a bit about the Moza software. Let's jump in the sim now, guys. All right, guys, we're in the flight deck of the Citation X by Flight Effects. And what I'd like to say is this airplane on its own has an amazing flight model and is very in-depth airplane. It's awesome. I'll be streaming this shortly. However, once it's paired with a force back yoke like this Moza, it transforms the simulation experience. All right, guys, as we're accelerating down Geneva's runway 22, put two hands on here. We're going to do a nice little pullback and hold. And the airplane's going to get nicely off the ground. We can go ahead and select our gear up. And as usual, our resources exceeds the GPU memory. Anyways, guys, this airplane flies amazingly on this yoke. You can see that, unlike a lot of other airplanes, look how much force requires and actual movement to get the airplane to do a nice big change. That's my biggest thing in most airplanes that I see, where it requires such little movement and the airplane's already, you know, flipping upside down. If airplanes flew like that, we'd be unstable quite a lot more. So this gives you, this airplane specifically, and the Max as well, the iFly Max, gives you a lot more control for those nice fine-tuned movements. So let's go ahead and spawn on final, and I'll show you guys how we fly here. I'm going to use FS flight control. which is an instructor panel. I'll put our flaps to the fullest position. I'll put our gear back down, and I'm going to spawn in a 3-mile final. Runway 22 is right there. We are somehow still visual with all the weather going on. As that, if you don't like this profile, if you want this to be, you know, stiffer or tighter or whatever, you can pause your sim. All right. You can bring the Moza software down here. There you go. Now you can see it. Let's say I want to make this a bit stiffer, so I go basic settings just to start off with, and let's just start with the overall force feedback intensity. We'll bring it up to 85. Okay, we're not going to save it just yet. Go back to the sim. I'll press resume. Okay, so we have our new settings plugged in. Kind of made a little bit of changes. We're going to get the don't sync, so I keep spawning ourselves on finals, so we're going to keep getting that. It'll off the center line. I forgot you have to manually deploy your spoilers in this airplane, which is kind of a unique feature. Go ahead and stow the reversers. Probably have to do a bit with my rudder sensitivity. It's a little sensitive. But anyways, that's the Yoke, guys. This thing hand flies beautifully, paired with a nice airplane. You can use this with the default airplanes just fine. It will transform those airplanes into better, nicer flying airplanes, but the flight model still will be quite terrible. So it does feel really cool with the base 172 because it has all the features. For example, if in a 172, if you guys ever flown in real world, when you're at idle thrust, the engine runs kind of rough. It's kind of roughly running. The timing is just not quite right. But if you add a little bit of RPM to around 1,000 RPM, the engine timing smooths out. And so in the Yoke, when you're at idle, the whole Yoke is kind of shaking. And then once you add a little bit of thrust, or power, I should say, to 100 or 1,000 RPM, the shaking goes to more just tiny little vibrating, which is really, really cool. More things like elevator droop, and as you add, if you started the takeoff roll at the Yoke like this and added full power, the Yoke would start to come towards you. A lot of really cool features that the GA aircraft can offer, as long as the sim can talk to them properly. So that's it, guys. This is the Moza AY210 base with the Moza grip. Very quick summary, pros and cons. Pro is build quality, price. Cons, shipping time, switches, and software. The pros, in my opinion, will outweigh the cons, but this did take over a month to get shipped to me. The switches are cheap feeling and kind of randomly placed, but to be honest, I don't use them. The price as a pro is insanely priced, super affordable force feedback Yoke. If you want to get yourself into the force feedback market, this is the cheapest one you can go with price wise, not build quality wise. And then obviously it's so well built that it shouldn't break in this foreseeable future. As I said, guys, CST Gaming opened this thing up. He told me it's legit. If CST says it's legit, I'll say it's legit too. I haven't opened it myself. I'm not brave enough to do that, but it is really, really cool. It's a nice, small, short profile as well in terms of height. It's more just kind of thin and lengthwise where it'll take it out, because it has to account for the all that pitch travel that it can do, right? So yeah, it has to go somewhere, and that's where it goes. But to compare to, for example, the FS Elite, which has that massive like box, much smaller than that. And then the last con, I kind of mixed the pros and cons there, but one of the other cons is the software. The software with every update gets so much better, but with Moza being newer to the flight sim community, they are still working on the software and having the sim talk to the Yoke and all that kind of stuff. So it's only going to get better with time. All right, guys, so that's about wraps it up. This is the Moza Yoke. We'll end it with that. I'm very impressed. I'm very satisfied with my purchase, and I basically only use, I only have this yoke, but there's no really reason for me to go and buy any other yoke. I don't miss that pendulum feel from the TCA, as the pendulum travel was like that, like it wasn't that much. So to me, it does the job. I might not be the market for that, as I you know, but for me this does the job just fine. So that pendulum part, I don't miss it too much. Once you go force feedback though, you really will have a hard time going back. If any of you guys have this in the comments and own it, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. And I'd also like to hear, if you own this and another yoke, did you go back to that other yoke? Or did you just stick with the Moza? I have a feeling you probably just stick with the Moza, but that's just my feeling. So all the codes are down below, guys. If you want to buy this yoke, please go ahead and use my affiliate link down below. It helps me greatly. And hopefully you enjoyed your time with this review, and we will see you in the next one. Have a good day, guys.